So now I would like to express, first of all, our fascination of your exposition, and to say some words concerning Russian Orthodox eschatological vision of the situation. What is important, that a perfect and very strange convergence of some crucial points. I have spoken recently with one saint father, Vladimir Tsvetkov. He is a monk and he is a chief of monastery who belongs to the tradition of the elders of the starets, Russian starets, and he was introduced in the Orthodox eschatology, Russian eschatology, and I have asked him to name the most important points of this eschatology. So, according to him, all the starets, all the elders of Russian Orthodox Church prophesied the spiritual renaissance, rebirth of Russian Christian tradition after the time of Bolshevist or Antichrist oppression. So what now we are witnessing of a fulfillment of the tradition that was made before Bolshevists, but they were more or less identified, their rule was foreseen, and the end of this rule was predicted. What should go next? Rebirth of Orthodox Church and the rebirth of Russia. At the same time, 2 points were after that, 3 points. The wars and with the great suffering of the Russia, and also the many challenges to Moscow and many damages that we will suffer. So very devastating wars waged against us in the future. After reconquest of the Constantinople, precisely that the elders of Russian Orthodox Church affirm that Russia will conquer Constantinople and free Hagia Sophia and restore it as Christian cathedral. But that will be in the animosity against Western Christianity that is recognized as a kind of fallen branch of our church. So it is all concerns only Orthodox Eastern Christian tradition. And the last thing, that was the great war against Israel and the reconquest of Constantinople. So there are not Muslims mentioned expressly, but that rebirth of Christendom in Russia, reconquest of Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, and the war against Pax Judaica. And in all these predictions, the rule of the international Jewry was recognized as the sign of the end of the time and as the representation of the rule of the Antichrist. So there is perfect convergence with what you have said, and that is also quite opposite to what Salafi Muslims affirm, because they are for alliance with the West and against so-called Russian oppression against Muslim minority. So we have two global visions, not one Christians, the other Muslims, but two global visions, one Muslim Christian that you defend and we defend, and the other Muslim Christian vision that is defended by Westerners, the Zionists, and the Jews. So you have promptly pointed out that the idea of the Jews is not the all of them.
No.
So and that gives the possibility to regard the third monotheistic phase as double. So they are part of the Jews. There will be, I think that major part of the Jews will be on other
That's right.
side, but there will be a little part, maybe few of them on our side.
Right. That's right.
So it is a kind. What is important that this line, eschatological line, divides not religions between themselves, but inside of three religions there are two contradictory eschatological positions. Two, only two in Islam, represented by Syeikh Imran Hosein, and by, I have spoken some days ago with President of Iran, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, personally, and he confirmed absolutely eschatological vision. The only difference, the vision of Imran Hosein, Ahmadinejad, the role of Mahdi played in this situation, because Imran Hosein stresses the point of the return of the Jesus, and the Iranian stress the point of return of Mahdi. That is difference. But geopolitically speaking, that is absolute convergency between Iranian eschatology and eschatology expressed by Syeikh Imran Hosein. There is the same difference, the dividing line in Christianity, Western and Eastern, and there is the same line, more deeper maybe and not so obvious, inside of Judaism. One part of Judaism that is Zionist, Pax Judaica, and the other that we could presume to be different. So I would like to thank you for your exposition, and maybe you could develop some point concerning this astonishing convergency of two forms of eschatological thought.
I deliberately paused when I suggested that perhaps Turkey would invade Syria, and that would be the beginning of the great wars. I'm not a prophet. No, I make mistakes. I'm just suggesting that perhaps this might happen. So no one should say that I'm prophesying that this will happen. No, that's not part of a scholarly discussion at all. This is an option that they have. This is perhaps the best option that they have. And I see no reason why they should not be pursuing this option of a Turkish invasion of Syria. A Turkish invasion of Syria would not only be for the purpose of trying to bring about regime change in Syria. They also want to deliver a very humiliating blow to Russia. If Russia loses Syria, Syria has a defense treaty with Russia. It's an ally of Russia, not like Libya. And if Russia loses her naval base on the Syrian Mediterranean coast, and it is replaced with a NATO base, loss of face for Russia would be strategically disastrous. There would be military implications as well, but I'm not a military strategist to be able to dwell on that point. I think the master plan which the Ottoman pursued and which the Salafis are now pursuing after the Ottomans is to drive a wedge as deep as they can possibly drive between the world of Islam and Rome. That's why the Ottoman Empire did so many things that it did in enslaving Christian women, and then they became members of the harem. Ottoman sultans never married, because if they married, their wives would have rights and the children would have legal rights, but slaves don't have rights. So they had only slaves, and they were all Christian women. I think one was a Russian, the wife, the concubine of Suleiman. They took Christian boys, which again is shameful for us, and converted them to Christianity, to Islam. This never happened in our history. Never, never, never. The Quran expressly prohibits. There is no compulsion in religion. And then these boys, having been converted to Christianity, were brought up to become the elite Janissary fighting force which protected the Sultan himself. And so the Ottoman sultans did not trust their own people. When Hagia Sophia was converted to a masjid, I think that was a dagger that was plunged deepest of all into the heart of Rome, in consequence of which there has been abiding hatred for Islam in many parts of Rome. And we saw some of it in the Bosnian War in Srebrenica. We see it in Greece, where that pain and that hatred is still there because of what the Ottomans did. But this was not enough. They need something more. So if they bring about regime change in Syria, sadly I have to say, the world will have to expect a slaughter of the Christians of Syria at the hands of the Salafi. And they're not going to be slaughtering the Christians because of any enmity with the Christians of Syria. I think the Christians of Syria will be slaughtered in order to drive the deepest wedge of all between the world of Islam and Rome. And this is why Syria is so important, and we are grateful to Russia that Syria has not become another Libya. We put a question mark behind Russia, another question mark behind China over what happened in Libya. And one day probably Russia will explain to us what happened. Why did Russia and why did China sacrifice Libya the way they did? But Russia has stood up in Syria, and because of that military stance of Russia, so far Syria has not fallen. But if Turkey attacks Syria, then the game changes.